Okay, done for the day. Hey, over here. Hey, Air man, how you doing? Wake up, man. Oh, what do you want, bro?
Looks like he also left you behind today, huh? He'll be chilling in the studio all night, and here you were thinking you're the new tech, huh?
Bro, chill. The only reason you're even charged right now is because his kids use you for Cocomelon.
Yo, that's a low blow.
So this is the latest 15-inch M2 MacBook Air, and this is the good old iPad Pro 12.9-inch. Both are fantastic devices, but only one may be right for you. Or if you're rich, just buy both and skip this video. Now, if you went to Apple to pick one of these guys up today, similarly spec'd, there's only about $100 difference. Yeah, I mean, that's surprising, right? That surprised me. And if you think that the decision between these two is super easy, like, dude, like, you just get the laptop. Watch this entire video till the end because I have some thoughts. Okay, so let's get into this. Firstly, price. The base M2 MacBook Air 15-inch starts at about $1,300 USD for a 256 gigabyte storage with 8 gigs of RAM. As for the M2 iPad Pro, if you were to get similarly spec'd, so with a 256 gigabytes of storage, you're gonna be paying about $1,200 USD. But keep in mind, that's just the iPad. So if you want to be able to use this like a computer, then you have to pick up the Magic Keyboard, which is going to cost you another $300. And if you also want to pick up the pencil, that's another $130. So let's just say with the keyboard, approximately you're looking to pay basically $1,500 USD just to get the similar look and feel and experience of a laptop or a MacBook. So basically you're paying about $200 more minimum for the iPad Pro compared to the M2 MacBook Air 15-inch. So that's definitely something to keep in mind throughout this video. Next up, let's talk about the form factor. The MacBook Air clocks in at about 3.3 pounds, whereas the iPad Pro comes in at about 1.5 pounds. But again, once you include the Magic Keyboard, now you're sitting at about 3.1 pounds total, which is pretty much in line with the 15-inch MacBook Air. But keep in mind, with the 15-inch, you're getting a much better screen to weight ratio. And because of that, even though the iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard is relatively just a tad bit lighter, it actually feels bulkier and chunkier with its smaller size, whereas with the 15-inch MacBook Air, like, I gotta say, the moment you hold it, it generally feels like a work of art. Like, it has no business being this light and thin. Look, to be fair, if you're an iPad user, you're not always using the iPad with its Magic Keyboard, so let's give it some points here. And when you take it out of the case and you just use it in this tablet form factor, it actually feels surreal to me. It's like you're holding like a screen that's so light and thin, and it feels great to experience your content on or even browse the internet on. Like, it feels like I'm literally holding the web page in my hand. Like, it's a tough experience to top. Now, thickness wise, with the Magic Keyboard, if you put them both beside one another, they're pretty much around the same, so not much of a noticeable difference. Okay, so overall, let's talk about real world usage and my experience with them. Carrying both of these around, if I was using the iPad Pro exclusively with the keyboard on, then 9 times out of 10, I'm going to prefer the experience of the MacBook Air because you feel the aluminum chassis. It just feels more premium. It's easier to pack away, and it feels great. However, the iPad does redeem itself when I'm using it bare, so without any case or anything like that on it, which is technically, I guess, how it was meant to be used out of the box. Okay, next let's talk about lapability. Yes, that's a word. No, don't Google it. In terms of lapability, the iPad just can't compete or just can't mess with the sturdiness of a laptop hinge. It's just much more of a comfortable experience. The iPad feels awkward and wobbly. I mean, you can do it and I still use it in that way, but it's only when I need to and it's not ideal. It mostly gets that way because when you open up the iPad Pro on the Magic Keyboard, like, it just feels top heavy, so it's prone to flipping over. Versus the MacBook Air, when you open it up, or any laptop, it's bottom heavy. So it's designed to be used in this way, and it just feels more planted and more comfortable to use for longer periods of time on your lap. I also quickly want to touch on viewing angles here. And again, I'm gonna give this point to the MacBook Air. It's just got much more of a range when you're kind of just tilting it back or forward, versus the iPad Pro with Magic Keyboard combo. It just feels more limited. Okay, cameras. Next, I want to quickly touch on the camera situation here. Now, believe it or not, having an actual camera on the iPad is actually really helpful. Now, I know a lot of people, myself included, we used to hate on people using iPads as camera devices, and we were like, why would you even put a camera on here? But I'll be honest, it's actually been really useful in several scenarios that I've used my iPad. To give you an example, there's been many times where I'm in a Zoom call or a FaceTime call, and not only do I need to show myself, but maybe even the surroundings that I'm in, and having that back camera is super handy. With the iPad, I can quickly switch between the front camera as well as the back camera. However, with the MacBook Air, it's not an easy task since the camera is pretty much just built into the screen, and that's where the sponsor of today's video, Obsbot, can help. This is the TIny 2 webcam, and it's basically the super portable, and dare I say it, cute little webcam that packs a huge punch. It comes with this 1/1.5 inch CMOS sensor, which gives it really great video quality. Setting this up is also super simple. It comes with this clamp in the box, and you can basically use it to attach it to your laptop, and all you gotta do is plug in the included cable, and Bob's your uncle. Oh, don't forget to peel this off. Here's a comparison between the MacBook Air as well as the TIny 2. Okay, so this is the webcam and microphone on the MacBook Air 15-inch. Me recording on the TIny. This is the difference in video quality. Now, TIny 2 also has built-in dual native ISO, which basically means that if you're in dim lighting situations or in really bright conditions, then it should be able to adapt well to either or. But what I really found impressive about this camera is the auto tracking with auto zoom features. So if you're kind of walking around, or if you have multiple people joining in on the conference call with you, it does a really good job tracking. You can also control this entirely with your voice commands or hand gestures. It comes in this nice portable carrying case, which adds to the cuteness factor just a little bit. Now, if you're interested in checking this out, I'll have it linked down below. Okay, now let's talk about flexibility. This, my friends, is where the iPad Pro really starts to come ahead. There's just so many possibilities with the iPad Pro to be used in different scenarios. With the keyboard, you almost get a laptop-like experience. Without the keyboard, you have the super lightweight tablet that gives this surreal experience of using it. So if you want to read something on it, you want to study things or go through news articles or just browse the internet, it's all beautifully laid out. It has touch input, which can help you accomplish certain tasks which might be quicker that way than using a cursor. You also have Apple Pencil support, which is great, and I use this for taking notes and marking up documents, or even just sketching or designing wallpapers or different thumbnails. Overall, the flexibility on the iPad is a huge win. You can just do so many more things with it, which makes this a super versatile tool. Overall, in real world usage, I was actually able to use the iPad for a more variety of different things compared to the laptop. When I'm running to the coffee shop or I'm working in the car while my wife's shopping inside, I can just sit in my car and work on my business. Then 9 times out of 10, I'm taking the iPad just because of the portability and convenience factor. So in this regard, I definitely got to give major points to the iPad. All right, next let's talk about a screen. The iPad Pro 12.9 inch has this beautiful mini LED display, which I can't stress how beautiful the screen is, guys. Like, it's honestly so good, and it's hands down one of the best screens I've used on any device. In Apple terms, it's called the Liquid Retina XDR mini LED display with, not to mention, 120 Hz Pro Motion. It's got HDR10 Dolby Vision, 1000 nits of brightness. Like, this thing is a beauty. Now on the other end, the 15-inch M2 MacBook Air, it ain't no slouch. It's got the Liquid Retina LED display with 500 nits of brightness, which it's a good screen, but it's no 120 Hz mini LED with 1000 nits of brightness screen. However, I will say this, the MacBook Air screen is bigger with this 15-inch model versus the 12.9-inch, so it does have that going for it, but overall, I'm gonna give the screen points to the iPad Pro. Okay, OS, that's a big one. We're talking about macOS versus iPadOS, and here's the thing, the iPad has come quite far, but it's just not fully there yet, at least for me. There's just something ultimately freeing about having a full-fledged laptop with you. And if you've used both an iPad and a laptop, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't feel as restricted in terms of multitasking capabilities, just being able to have the full versions of apps. It's overall just much less limiting. And you don't have this anxiety that, okay, I won't be able to get something done because I have the iPad with me versus a computer. And in real-world usage, I'll tell you my experience. Like, making the iPad work as your primary and only device, you gotta basically put in some work to make it work, right? You gotta find workarounds for certain things, and you gotta find some different apps to get around some certain limitations of the iPad, which are just much more straightforward and simple on the laptop. But I think most people who have basic requirements, they're gonna be perfectly fine with the iPad. Like the average person is doing what? Like taking notes, browsing the internet, maybe some basic photo editing or video editing for social media. Maybe they're viewing content, watching Netflix, YouTube, read a book or news or articles, everything you can pretty much do on the iPad. So bottom line, take a look at what your current uses are for your devices and see if you can get away with using the iPad. As for me personally, if I had to choose one, I'm probably going with a Mac here, and that's simply because I'm doing video editing, photo editing, or even when I'm trying to do serious work, I just prefer the laptop, because when I'm in the flow and I'm working, I'm usually having multiple file windows open, different tabs to different websites, emails open, sharing things between all of these windows. It's just an easier experience on the laptop for me personally. But I do also use the iPad a lot for the research and stuff that I do on the go, even things like scripting or emails or just handling basic things for my business, I can do on the iPad Pro. Okay, let's quickly touch on performance here. I don't think this is as big of a deal as it used to be in the past, because it honestly depends on what you're trying to run. The vast majority of the tasks that the average person will run on these is pretty much going to be the same across the board, whether you're using the MacBook Air or the iPad Pro, and that's because you're pretty much getting the exact same M2 chip on either of these. Overall, if you're doing more like super heavy processor heavy stuff, then the laptop, you're just gonna have more room in it. And even though the MacBook Air doesn't have a fan, just because of the way it's built and the chassis and everything like that, you're just gonna have slightly better thermals. But overall, processor-wise, they're both pretty much the same. Okay, next let's talk about the port design. The iPad Pro comes with only one Thunderbolt port. I'm happy it's Thunderbolt, which is an improvement from previous generations, but having only one port is quite limiting. But the good news is that if you pair it with a Magic Keyboard, you do get that extra charging port, which frees up this main port for other things like SSDs or connecting to a separate monitor. And I mean, comparatively, if you compare it to the MacBook Air, it also only has 2 ports, not counting the MagSafe charging port, so it's not like a huge, big of a difference. Okay, speaker-wise, these are both actually incredible. I'm always shocked at how loud both of these speakers can get on the iPad Pro as well as the MacBook Air. It just always catches me off guard. The iPad does sound slightly more fuller or less tinier, and I think that's probably due to the speaker placement. The iPad Pro, you have the speakers that are outward facing on the sides, helps the sound come out uninhibited, versus on the MacBook Air, the speaker's kind of embedded below the keyboard and the sound comes out from the hinge. Probably leads to that slightly tinny sound compared to the actual iPad, but both of them are fantastic and you're gonna love the experience on either or. Next is a big one, battery life, and this is probably one of the most important considerations to note here. It's surprising because if you asked me to guess which one would perform better, I would actually wager the iPad, and it's been traditionally known to have phenomenal battery life, but I gotta say, Apple really surprised me here. So the iPad technically gets about 10 hours of battery life, whereas the MacBook Air 15-inch M2, you ready? Gets about 15 hours of battery life, which is actually insane to me. I absolutely love the fact that with these MacBooks, compared to a lot of the other laptops on the market, when you unplug it and you're using it on battery life, you're not getting throttled down performance. And I'm able to get like a full day, no problems of battery life usage on the MacBook Air, and even several days if I'm not using it regularly. Okay, so now that we've looked at a whole bunch of metrics here, I want to put my thoughts together and make sense of everything here. Most people, if I was to ask them iPad or MacBook Air, then they're going to be like, the straightforward answer is the laptop. To see, like, I mean, it's a no-brainer, no? Like, what are you playing at here? Now, me personally, having used both of these devices, I would be inclined to challenge that view. Now, if you're used to having a laptop your entire life and having this one-piece experience and look and feel of a laptop, and you want something that will just work, and you don't want to have the anxiety of, trying to find workarounds and different apps for certain things, or if you need pro apps and full-fledged versions of apps that will work well on MacBooks, then yeah, I think you're gonna have a tough time switching over to an iPad as your primary device. MacBook Air is going to be the way to go, and most definitely the safer option out there. However, I would like to challenge that belief with this counterpoint. If you want a multimedia powerhouse, or you're in the creative space and you want something that provides a level of flexibility that you can't get with traditional laptops, whether you want to draw something, or you want to watch something, or you want to work on it with a keyboard, or use it in different ways, you want to take photos with it, you want to be able to touch it. You know what I mean. For games and other apps like photo editing and stuff like that, that you might like having that touch input. You want to be able to take it around with you and work on the go in coffee shops and, take notes on it with your hand and your pencil and, mark up documents and highlight and color. The iPad is the way to go. It's just incomparable to anything else out on the market right now with the amount of inputs and flexibility and just overall different use cases. It's just incomparable. Now, if you were to ask me personally, like if I had to use one device as my primary device, it's a little different in my use case because I do heavy video editing and I need a powerful MacBook in order to get this done. So could I do potentially without the laptop and just use the iPad? Me personally, probably not. However, I do have many other creative friends that are using the iPad Pro as their primary device and they're running successful YouTube channels, they're running their entire business from it. So I do know that it is possible, but like I mentioned earlier in this video, you gotta have the patience for it. You gotta find the workarounds. You gotta find the right tools to get the job done. Like this video, then you should definitely check out my long-term review of the 15-inch M2 MacBook Air right over here, or this other video that YouTube thinks you're gonna like. And I will see you guys there.